I am John, 28 years old. I used to work at a small company, but due to structural changes, I had to find a new environment with better growth opportunities. However, not long after starting, I realized that the workload here was heavier than I had imagined. The overwhelming tasks often forced me to stay late into the night. Many nights, I would see a thin woman diligently mopping the hallway floor, but when I looked at my phone, the clock had already 0, and I wondered, was there still a cleaner working at this hour? Many times, I wanted to greet her, but every time I stepped out the door, she had vanished, as if she had never been there. She moved like a shadow, just a blink, and she disappeared, making it impossible to determine where she had gone. Again and again, the sight kept repeating itself. I couldn't help but wonder, something was not right, or worse, something did not belong to this world. Curious, I decided to observe her more closely. When I stepped into the hallway, she was still there, bending down and carefully scrubbing each stain on the floor. I smiled and said,
"Good evening, ma'am. Do I crawl to Rigo? You're working late, aren't you?"
She did not respond. She just silently wiped the glass, each stroke slow and deliberate, as if following an unconscious habit. I hesitated for a moment before continuing.
"Have you worked here long? I just started, so I don't know many people yet."
She paused for a moment, tilting her head slightly backward, preventing me from seeing her face clearly. I took another step forward, and suddenly, the overhead lights flickered continuously. When the lights stabilized, she was gone. The hallway ahead of me was eerily silent. No trace, no sound, as if no one had ever stood there. A chill ran down my spine, but I forced myself to shake off the strange feeling. I quietly returned to work, though my mind kept replaying the question, where did she go? A while later, as I was absorbed in my work, I suddenly heard the sound of a cloth rubbing against glass. Out of reflex, I looked up, and my heart almost stopped when I saw the woman standing outside, silently cleaning, with a vacant expression. Suddenly, she stopped and stared straight at me, her pale face pressed against the glass, so close that I could see every faint blue vein beneath her tight, lifeless skin. I shivered, rubbed my eyes, and when I looked again, she was gone. Only a faint, wet handprint remained smudged on the glass. A cold chill spread through my entire body. Panicking, I hurriedly packed my things and rushed out. I ran toward the elevator, frantically pressing the button, my heart pounding. The elevator doors slid open, and I froze. Inside stood the same woman. Feeling uneasy, I hesitated before stepping in. Forcing a smile, I said,
"Are you working the night shift, ma'am?"
I tried to start a conversation, but she remained silent. Only then did I notice her appearance more closely. She was frail, her complexion sickly pale, as if she had no life left in her. Suddenly, the elevator shook violently. The lights flickered rapidly, and then went out completely. He spoke very slowly. Panic surged through me as I quickly pulled out my phone to use as a flashlight. But the screen glitched, and then shut off. Out of nowhere, a cold, bony hand rested on my shoulder. I felt my flesh freeze at the touch. Slowly, I turned my head, each movement heavy and trembling. Before me, the woman's face emerged, deathly pale, with sunken, hollow eyes that sent a shiver down my spine. I screamed, trying to back away, but my back was already pressed against the freezing elevator wall. An overwhelming terror gripped me as she inched closer, her empty eyes staring deep into mine. Paralyzed by fear, I collapsed to the floor, hugging my knees, trembling uncontrollably. Just when I thought all hope was lost, the elevator doors suddenly opened, and a flashlight beam shone directly at me. A concerned male voice called out,
"Hey, are you okay?"
I looked up to see the building's security guard staring at me with worried eyes. I scrambled out of the elevator, collapsing onto the floor, my heart pounding wildly. Shaking, I asked him,
"Did you see a cleaning lady here just now?"
The security guard looked at me, puzzled.
Everyone has gone home already. It's just you here.
Horrified by his words, my heart pounded in my chest. Then, who was the woman in the elevator? The next morning, I recounted everything to a coworker. Fearfully, I said,
Last night I saw a cleaning lady outside our office.
After hearing my description of her appearance, my colleague immediately looked shocked. He whispered,
She used to be a janitor at the company. 2 months ago, she had a stroke and died right in that elevator.
Stunned by the horrifying truth, I never dared to work overtime alone in the office again. But one time, as I stepped into the elevator alone, I was stunned when I saw the reflection of the light on the glass door. Reflected in the metal doors, I saw a pale face with a distorted, eerie smile, staring right at me.
I am Anna, 19 years old this year. I just passed the university entrance exam and moved to the city to study. The first time stepping into the big city, everything was unfamiliar to me. I thought I would have interesting experiences here, but the first memory of this place was something I could never have expected. I rented a room deep in a small alley, about a 10-minute walk from the university. The dormitory is old, with peeling walls, a narrow and dark hallway. The landlady is a woman in her 50s, and she led me to a room on the second floor. At the end of the hallway, the small room appears before me with a simple wooden bed against the wall, an old study table, and a small window overlooking the hallway.
This room is a bit old, but very clean and quiet. What do you think?
I think it's quite nice. May I ask, is anyone staying in the room across the hall?
That room is empty. No one has stayed there yet. You clean the room, and if you need anything, just call me, okay?
I quickly tidied up the room, and once I was done, it was already dark outside. The dormitory was very quiet at night, and I could hardly hear the bustling traffic on the street. I lay on the bed, exhausted, and quickly drifted off to sleep. I vaguely heard footsteps in the hallway. Perhaps someone had just returned to their room, so I didn't pay much attention and continued to sleep. The next day, I was preparing the content for the presentation, and I was so focused on writing that I lost track of time. Pick up the phone to check. It's already 0000 p.m. Suddenly, I heard the sound of footsteps clattering in the hallway. I wondered who could still be walking around outside at this hour. I looked out the window, but the corridor was quiet and empty. A chill ran down my spine. I quickly shut the window and rushed to bed. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by the sound of children playing, and there were whispers of people talking, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. Those sounds seemed to be right outside my room. Is anyone there? I called out, but all I received was an invisible silence, a chilling atmosphere enveloping the entire room. I fearfully turned to look out the window. Suddenly, I saw a shadow standing outside the window, a hazy silhouette. Only part of the face could be seen staring at her. The next morning, I decided to tell the landlady about my experiences over the past few days.
It could just be the sound of a cat. There are a lot of homeless cats in this region at night.
Why didn't you tell me from the beginning?
You must be so exhausted that you're only having nightmares.
I wanted to leave this place, but finding affordable accommodation in the city was difficult. If I were to move out now, I wouldn't know where to go. If those sounds stopped completely, I thought I might be able to stay a little longer. A few days later, I no longer heard those strange sounds. Perhaps the landlady did something to keep them from bothering me. If those sounds completely disappear, I think I could stay here a bit longer. At midnight, I suddenly heard a knock on the door. I got up, stepped outside, and opened it, but no one was there. As I looked around, I noticed a man standing motionless not far away, his back turned to me. A chill ran down my spine, as I slowly walked towards the man and called out, "Is anyone there?"
Get out of here. You are not allowed to stay here.
"Why am I not allowed to be here? Who are you?" The man slowly turned around, the light from the bulb revealing a gruesome, bloodied face, an image I could never forget. Seeing that image, I screamed in fear. But looking around, it was the familiar room again. It turns out everything was just a dream. Suddenly, a knocking sound echoed. I didn't know who was knocking on my door in the middle of the night like that. I began to fear and secretly thought, could it be them? The people in the room opposite? Who is it? Who's out there? The knocking continued to grow louder, as if the person outside was about to break the door down. I was terrified, staring at the door without daring to breathe heavily.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
I knew that if I stayed, even more terrifying things awaited me.
When I woke up, it was already bright outside, and the door was still tightly shut as if nothing had happened. I quickly took everything I had and left this horrible house.
I had a feeling that if I stayed any longer, even more terrifying things would await me.
The man and that room remain a mystery to me. But after everything that has happened, I no longer dare to return to that boarding house again.
Have you ever left a bad review for an order? I never thought that a bad online review could drag me into hell. Hello, my name is Emily, 25 years old, a horror fiction writer for a renowned publishing company. I had written countless terrifying stories, but I never imagined that one day I would become the character in a real-life horror tale. It all started last month when I ordered dinner from a small, newly opened restaurant near my apartment building. Starving, I eagerly opened the food container, but the moment I did, a foul, nauseating smell hit me, making me rush to the bathroom to vomit. Even more horrifying, inside the container was something that looked like a decomposing human finger. Terrified, I immediately threw the food into the trash and left a 1-star review for the restaurant. I had no idea that this was just the beginning of a nightmare. Shortly after, I received a message from the restaurant owner. I can refund your money, Kyle, but it will cost you your life in exchange. I shivered at the words on my screen. Was this some sick joke or a real threat? My building had no security. So if the restaurant owner really wanted revenge, he could come straight to my apartment. After thinking carefully, I decided to stay overnight in the room of Helen, my colleague who lived upstairs, to avoid trouble. I had a camera installed outside my door so I could monitor my apartment through my phone. Looking at the screen, I saw a tall man wearing black sportswear and a baseball cap standing in front of my door. I wanted to tell Helen, but she was too focused on texting someone, seemingly unaware of my distress. Suddenly, the man looked directly at the camera, mumbling something under his breath. A large, deep scar ran down his cheek, making him look terrifying. He licked his lips, smirked with satisfaction, and then made a throat-slitting gesture before turning away. I trembled as I stared at my phone screen. What was he planning? I turned to Helen and realized she had been staring at me the whole time. Her gaze gave me an eerie feeling, as if something sinister was about to happen. I forced a smile and asked, "Helen, is something wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" Helen smiled slightly and said,
"Oh, it's nothing."
I nervously reached for my glass of water but accidentally spilled it on a notebook on the table. Hurriedly, I picked up the notebook to dry it, but a photo slipped out and fell to the floor. When I bent down to pick it up, my heart nearly stopped. In the picture was Helen smiling brightly next to the very same man who had stood outside my door. A horrifying realization struck me. Helen was the one who had recommended this restaurant to me. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. Helen glanced at me before standing up to answer it. Sensing that something was wrong, I quickly opened Facebook and secretly started a live stream before hiding my phone. Helen soon returned, followed by the man from earlier. I placed my phone on the table and looked at them in fear. Helen, who is this? Helen smiled slightly and said,
This is my boyfriend, the owner of the restaurant you rated 1 star.
I stammered. What do you mean? Did you plan all of this? Helen burst into laughter and said,
That's right. I hate your fake perfection. You took everything that should have been mine.
Then she suddenly slapped me hard across the face. A burning pain spread across my cheek, making my head spin. Helen pointed at me in anger and shouted,
I was supposed to be the best writer. How dare a newcomer like you surpass me?
Before I could react, Helen grabbed my collar and repeatedly struck me in the face. Each blow landed heavily, making my head spin as my vision gradually blurred from the throbbing pain. I struggled to stand and asked, If you hate me so much, why did you let me stay here? Helen laughed hysterically and said,
Because I wanted to see you suffer, to watch you beg for mercy right in front of me.
Enraged, I shouted, Keep dreaming. You're just a failure. Don't blame others for your incompetence. The restaurant owner suddenly lunged forward and punched me hard in the stomach, sending me crashing onto the floor. Before I could recover, he pulled out a knife and slashed a deep cut across my shoulder. I screamed in pain, clutching my wound as warm blood soaked through my thin shirt. Helen stood over me laughing.
Emily, beg me, and I'll let you die painlessly.
Through gritted teeth, I spat back. I will never beg a loser like you. Furious, Helen snatched the knife from her boyfriend's hand and lunged at me. Just as I thought it was the end for me, a loud, urgent knocking sounded at the door. Helen froze, turning her face toward the door, silently observing the commotion outside. Sensing my chance, I immediately sprang up, kicked Helen away, and sprinted toward the door. Standing outside was Lucy, my close colleague from work, her face filled with panic. Lucy quickly caught me and asked worriedly,
Emily, are you okay?
I gasped, Help me! Helen wants to kill me! Before I could explain further, Helen shouted angrily,
Don't think you can escape from here.
She gripped the knife tightly and charged at us, her bloodshot eyes filled with madness. Lucy and I froze in fear as Helen's twisted expression made her look like a completely different person. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind us. Police officers had arrived. It turned out that when Lucy saw my live stream, she immediately called the police and rushed to my place. Helen and the restaurant owner were swiftly restrained and taken away before they could fight back. I let out a sigh of relief, but as the adrenaline faded, pain overwhelmed my body. Exhausted, I lost consciousness and sank into darkness. When I woke up, I found myself in the hospital, my wounds carefully bandaged. This nightmare was finally over, but the scars it left behind would haunt me forever.
After a long, tiring day at work, Emma had a habit of soaking in the bathtub, letting her body relax and washing away all the stress. Lately, she had noticed something strange. Her shampoo, body wash, and even toothpaste were running out faster than usual. At first, she thought maybe she had been using them too carelessly, so she tried to be more frugal. However, an uneasy feeling kept growing inside her, even though she couldn't quite explain why. That evening, after taking a bath, Emma wrapped herself in a soft blanket, turned on the TV, and relaxed.
Authorities have issued a high-priority warning regarding the escape of a dangerous criminal with a history of multiple homicides. The fugitive has been at large for several days, and the latest sighting places him in Orange County. Residents.
Oh my God, how dare I go outside?
A chill ran down her spine. She stood up immediately, checked the front door and windows, and locked everything tightly. After making sure there were no gaps, she returned to her bedroom. But just then, a faint sound came from under the bed. She froze. Her throat went dry. Her heart pounded in her chest. Holding her breath, she peered into the dim darkness beneath the bed. A small mouse was quietly nibbling on crumbs. Emma let out a relieved sigh and chuckled at herself for panicking over nothing. But just as she was about to stand up, another sound came from behind her.
Silly girl.
A soft, eerie giggle. Emma's body went rigid. It felt as if invisible hands were tightening around her throat. She didn't want to turn around, but fear compelled her to face the truth.
Who's there?
Slowly, she approached the wardrobe. Her fingers trembled as they reached for the handle. Taking a deep breath, she gathered all her courage and gently pushed the door open.
You sought me.